Chapter 1: The Illusion of Normalcy. It was a quiet evening in the small town of Lincoln Heights, a place where everyone knew each other's business. The streets were lined with trees, their limbs heavy with the weight of autumn leaves. It wasn't the kind of place where anything unusual happened, but it was the perfect setting for secrets to grow, hidden behind white picket fences and well-maintained lawns. Lena was a typical resident of Lincoln Heights, a town that prided itself on its peace and stability. She lived in a two-story house on the corner of Maple Street, the kind of house you could find on any suburban block. Her husband, Jack, worked as an accountant, and their daughter, Emily, was a bright and curious 10-year-old. Lena had everything she could ever want: a loving family, a charming house, and a job she enjoyed as a librarian at the local library. Her life seemed perfect, like the picture of normalcy she had always dreamed of. But even the most perfect lives have cracks, and Lena's life was no exception. Every night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't that there was any overt sign of trouble. Her marriage was solid, her daughter was healthy, and her job was secure. It was the subtle things that bothered her. The way Jack would sometimes come home late without any explanation, or how Emily seemed to have more questions than answers lately. But Lena pushed those thoughts away, telling herself it was just the stress of everyday life. Then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, everything changed. Lena was organizing the library when a man walked in. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit, with a face that seemed too familiar. His hair was dark, neatly combed, and he carried himself with an air of authority that made Lena uneasy. He wasn't a regular visitor to the library, and the way he looked around as though he was searching for something only added to the unease creeping up her spine. "Can I help you?" Lena asked, forcing a smile. The man turned to her, his eyes cold and calculating. "I think you can," he said, his voice low and steady. "I'm looking for someone, a woman named Lena Carter." Lena's heart skipped a beat. "That's me," she replied, her voice trembling despite herself. "Do we know each other?" The man shook his head. "No, but I know a lot about you, and I think you know more than you're letting on." Lena felt her breath catch in her throat. The man's words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and she knew instantly that something had changed, something she couldn't ignore. The man took a step closer, lowering his voice even further. "I need you to come with me. There are things about your life that you don't understand, things that you don't even know are happening." Lena's mind raced, but before she could respond, the man turned and started walking toward the exit. He didn't wait to see if she was following. Something inside her screamed to ignore him, to stay in the safety of the familiar. But Lena couldn't shake the feeling that this man held the key to something she had been searching for, whether she realized it or not. She followed him out of the library, and as they stepped into the rain-soaked street, Lena felt as though she were walking into the unknown. The world she had known, the life she had built, suddenly felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. The man led her to a black car parked at the curb. Without saying a word, he opened the door for her. Lena hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. The man's expression remained unreadable, but there was a quiet urgency in the way he motioned for her to get in. The rain beat down harder, the sound of the droplets hitting the car's roof deafening in the silence that had fallen between them. Lena sat in the passenger seat, her mind a whirl of confusion and fear. What had she gotten herself into? Who was this man? And what did he know about her life that she didn't? The car pulled away from the curb, the familiar streets of Lincoln Heights disappearing behind them. As they drove deeper into the unknown, Lena felt a strange sense of inevitability wash over her. She had been living in a world of illusion, convinced that everything was as it seemed. But now, she was about to learn the truth, a truth that would turn her world upside down. For the first time in her life, Lena realized that the normalcy she had fought so hard to maintain was nothing more than a mask. And now the mask was about to slip. Chapter 2. The Secret Beneath the Surface. The car sped through the winding roads, leaving the comforting glow of streetlights behind as they entered the outskirts of town. Lena glanced nervously at the man beside her, but he didn't look at her once. His eyes focused on the dark road ahead. The quiet hum of the car was the only sound that filled the space between them, amplifying the heavy silence that seemed to press against Lena's chest. The rain continued to fall, the windshield wipers slicing through the downpour with mechanical precision. Her mind raced, each thought colliding with the next, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't make sense of what was happening. Who was this man? What did he mean by things about your life that you don't understand? And why did it feel like she was being pulled into something far larger than herself? After what felt like an eternity, the car finally slowed, turning off the main road and down a narrow gravel path. The headlights illuminated a dark building in the distance, its silhouette standing like a silent sentry against the stormy night. The structure seemed out of place, a stark contrast to the quiet suburban town she had called home for so many years. The man's hands tightened around the steering wheel, his jaw set in grim determination. "We're here," he said, breaking the silence. His voice was firm, devoid of any emotion, but there was something in it, a sense of finality. Lena swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her throat. She had never been one for adventure, much less for throwing caution to the wind. But the grip of fear that had been building in her chest since the moment the man had approached her now seemed like something else, something darker. As the car came to a stop, Lena hesitated before opening the door. The moment she stepped out, the cool night air wrapped around her like a shroud, but it wasn't the cold that made her shiver. It was the sense that she was stepping into something far beyond her control. "Follow me," the man said, already heading toward the door of the building. Lena hesitated for only a moment longer before following, her footsteps faltering as she walked across the damp gravel. The building loomed ahead, its dark windows reflecting the flashes of lightning in the sky above. It looked abandoned, its weathered exterior betraying years of neglect. Yet, there was an eerie aura about it, as though it was waiting for something or someone to return. The man opened the door with ease, as if he had been here countless times before. Lena stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through the cracked windows. The space inside was vast, the air heavy with the scent of dust and decay. But what caught her attention was the row of monitors on the far wall, each one displaying something different: graphs, numbers, and static-filled images. "What's all this?" Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she took a step closer. The man didn't answer immediately. He moved past her, flipping a switch on one of the panels, and the lights overhead flickered to life, casting a cold, sterile glow across the room. For the first time, Lena noticed the large, high-tech equipment that lined the walls, machines that looked far too advanced for a town like Lincoln Heights. "This is where things get complicated," the man said, his voice carrying an unsettling calm. "What you're about to see is everything you've never been told about your life." Lena's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to steady her breath. She had never been one to jump to conclusions, but the strange urgency in the man's tone made her feel like she was on the edge of something she couldn't even begin to comprehend. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You've been living a lie, Lena. Everything you think you know about yourself, about your family, your life is not the truth. This town, this world, it's all part of something much bigger." Lena's pulse quickened as the words sank in. "Are you saying my life, my family, it's all fake?" The man's eyes narrowed slightly, as though he had expected her to react this way. "Not fake. Manipulated. Controlled." Lena felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. Her world, which had always seemed so grounded, suddenly felt like it was slipping out from under her. "How do you know all this?" she asked, her voice trembling. The man stepped closer, his gaze intense. "I've been watching you for a long time. Watching all of you. You're part of something much larger than you realize. And I'm here to show you the truth." He reached for one of the monitors and pressed a button. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy image of Lena's house, her home, the one on Maple Street. It was a live feed showing the front door, the windows, the driveway. Lena gasped, her heart stopping for a moment. "What is this? How do you have a camera in my house?" The man's expression remained cold, but there was a hint of something in his eyes, something that bordered on regret. "It's not just your house. It's everything. Everyone in Lincoln Heights. You've all been part of an experiment, Lena." The room seemed to close in on her, the walls pressing against her chest as the weight of his words settled in. She had always thought her life was ordinary, predictable, even a little dull at times. But now, standing in this strange, sterile room with the man, who seemed to know far too much about her, she understood that nothing in her life had ever been what it seemed. "You can't be serious," she whispered, but the doubt in her voice was drowned out by the terrifying certainty that what he was saying might actually be true. The man's eyes softened, just slightly. "I wish I could say it wasn't, but it is. And now, Lena, it's time for you to see the truth, because everything you thought you knew is about to change." Chapter 3. Unveiling the Past. Lena stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the screen that displayed her home, a place she had always thought of as her sanctuary. Now it felt more like a stage, a set for a play she had never auditioned for. The man's words echoed in her mind, a constant drumbeat that grew louder with each passing second. "You've been living a lie, manipulated, controlled." She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but her voice seemed to catch in her throat. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in on her, and she suddenly found herself gasping for air, as though the very atmosphere had thickened. "Why? Why would anyone do this?" Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. The man's eyes softened, but the hardness in his voice never wavered. "Because there are forces at play that you can't even begin to understand. This town, this experiment, it's all part of something much bigger. A system designed to observe, influence, and manipulate. Your family, your life. None of it is as it seems." Lena felt her knees tremble, but she forced herself to stay standing. "You're telling me my whole life is just a simulation? A lie?" The man nodded, his face serious. "Not exactly. It's a controlled environment, a carefully constructed narrative. Your memories, your experiences, they've been shaped. Even your emotions, Lena. Everything has been influenced, monitored, and adjusted. The question is why you've never questioned it." Lena's head swam as she tried to grasp the magnitude of what the man was telling her. Her perfect life, her family, her job, everything she had worked for, had been built on a foundation of falsehoods. She felt the weight of betrayal press down on her chest, suffocating her. "I don't understand," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. "How could I not have known? How could I have been so blind?" The man sighed, almost as if he pitied her. "That's part of the design. Your perception has been shaped. You've been living inside a controlled narrative, and when you're inside it, you don't see the edges. You don't see the wires holding everything together. But now, it's starting to unravel, and you're beginning to see the cracks." Lena's mind raced. But who's doing this? Who's behind all of this? The man hesitated before answering, his eyes flickering with a brief hint of hesitation. "I don't have all the answers, but there are organizations, groups with power and influence, who are using technology to control not just individuals but entire communities. Lincoln Heights is just one experiment, one of many." Lena struggled to process the information. It felt like her entire world had been turned upside down. So, I'm not. I'm not really living my own life. The man's gaze hardened. No, Lena. Your life has been orchestrated. Every choice, every relationship, every moment. It's all been manipulated. Lena stumbled back, her mind spinning. She thought of Jack, her husband, her partner. How could he be a part of this? Was he in on it, or was he as much a victim as she was? And Emily, her daughter. What about her? Had they been manipulated, too? The man stepped forward, his voice softening. You're not alone in this. The people you love, they're not the enemy. But they, too, have been affected by this system. Just like you. A cold shiver ran down Lena's spine. She had always trusted Jack, always believed in their marriage, in their family. But now, everything she thought she knew about them felt like a lie. What do I do now? She whispered, the words escaping her lips before she could stop them. The man studied her for a moment, then turned away from her. Now you start to understand. You need to learn the truth about this system, about the forces that control it. You need to find out what happened, why it started, and what you can do to stop it. Lena's heart pounded in her chest. Stop it? She repeated, her voice shaky. How do I stop something like this? How do I even begin to fight back against something so powerful? The man's eyes darkened. By understanding the truth, by seeing the people who pull the strings, by uncovering the hidden layers of your life. The answers are out there, Lena, but it's not going to be easy. You'll face obstacles and you'll have to make choices. But the truth is the only thing that will set you free. Lena felt the weight of his words sink into her chest, heavy and suffocating. For the first time, she realized that her quest for normalcy had been a lie. The very foundation of her life, her family, her happiness. It had all been built on falsehoods. And now, she was standing at the edge of a truth so dark that it threatened to consume everything she knew. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Now we begin the real work. We dig deeper into the system and we find the answers. Together. Lena swallowed, a knot forming in her throat. She knew, deep down, that her life would never be the same. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Whatever lay ahead, it would be a journey she could not walk alone. The man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and a map appeared on the screen. This is where it begins, he said, pointing to a location marked on the map. You need to go here. It's where the answers lie. Lena looked at the map, her fingers trembling as she took in the location. It was a place she knew, a secluded cabin on the outskirts of town. She had passed it 1,000 times without ever giving it a second thought. But now it felt like the key to unlocking everything she had ever known, or thought she had known. Is this the end of the beginning? Lena asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man gave a small, grim smile. It's only the beginning, Lena, and you're not going to like where it takes you. Chapter 4. The Final Revelation. Lena stood there, staring at the map in her hands, her mind struggling to make sense of the information flooding her senses. A secluded cabin on the outskirts of Lincoln Heights, a place she had never thought twice about before. But now, it felt like the very heart of the mystery that had turned her world upside down. The man, whose presence had become almost too familiar in such a short time, waited for her response. His silence was heavy, filled with anticipation. She had no choice but to move forward, to chase the truth that had eluded her for so long. Why me? She asked, her voice strained, but desperate for answers. Why am I involved in all this? The man took a slow, deliberate breath, his eyes never leaving hers. Because, Lena, you've always been in the center of it. You've been a part of this system from the very beginning, whether you knew it or not. And now that you're awake, It's time to find out why. Lena's head swirled with conflicting emotions. Betrayal, anger, fear. But beneath all of that, there was a flicker of resolve. She had lived a lie for so long. Now, the truth was within reach, no matter how terrifying it was. She glanced at the map again, the red dot marking the cabin burning into her vision. I'll go. I need to know what's there. The man nodded, a shadow of approval crossing his face. Good. Time is of the essence. We don't have much longer before they realize what you're doing. Lena's heart skipped at the mention of they. Who were they? And how much danger was she truly in? There were too many questions, and the answers were always one step ahead, just out of reach. I'll need to go alone, she said, her voice firm. She couldn't drag Jack or Emily into this. They were part of the illusion, yes, but they didn't deserve to be caught in the web of lies that was closing in around her. The man hesitated, as though weighing the risk. Finally, he nodded. You're right. They'll only slow you down. But be careful. They'll be watching. The warning echoed in Lena's mind as she left the room, her body moving almost on autopilot. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets of Lincoln Heights slick and wet, the sky clearing to reveal a pale moon. She walked briskly, her footsteps echoing in the quiet night. When she reached the outskirts of town, the familiar landscape seemed different. It was as if she were seeing it for the first time, the shadows of the trees stretching long across the road, the houses on the edges of town silent and empty. The quiet town she had known for so long now felt like a stage for something darker, a place where secrets festered beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed. The cabin loomed ahead, nestled at the edge of a dense forest. The closer Lena got, the more the air around her seemed to hum with an unnatural energy. She could feel her heart beating faster, the weight of the unknown pressing down on her chest. She reached for the doorknob, her hand trembling as she turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. It smelled musty, as though the place hadn't been used in years. Inside, the walls were lined with old bookshelves, filled with dusty tomes and strange devices she couldn't identify. In the center of the room stood a large table, covered in papers and maps. One of the maps caught her eye, the same one from the man's device. It was a blueprint of Lincoln Heights, but it wasn't just a map of the town. It was a blueprint of everything, the lives of the people in it, their movements, their interactions. Lena stepped closer, her breath catching as she saw her name on the map, circled in red ink. But there was something else, too. A series of dates and times, each one linked to significant events in her life. Her first job, the day she met Jack, the birth of Emily, each moment carefully planned, carefully controlled. Suddenly, the room seemed to shift around her. The walls felt as though they were closing in, the air thick with a sense of impending doom. A low hum filled the room, and Lena spun around, her heart racing. From the shadows, a figure emerged. A tall, imposing man, his face partially obscured by the dim light. "Welcome to the truth, Lena," he said, his voice deep and calm. "You've been a part of something much larger than you could ever have imagined." Lena's pulse quickened, her body frozen in place. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking with fear and anger. The man stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "I'm the one who created the system, the one who's been watching you, and now you're finally going to understand." Lena's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the situation. This man, he was the one behind everything, the one pulling the strings, controlling the lives of everyone in Lincoln Heights, including her own. "You've been living in a controlled narrative, Lena," the man continued. "Every moment of your life manipulated, every choice preordained. But it wasn't just you. Everyone in this town has been a part of this experiment. You were chosen for your specific traits, your tendencies, your vulnerabilities. You were always meant to find out, to wake up, Lena's knees buckled beneath her as the weight of his words hit her. Why? Why do this? Why to us? The man's expression darkened. Because we need to know what happens when we control the narrative. We need to know how people react, how they adapt. Lincoln Heights is a model, a prototype for something much larger. We're testing a new kind of society, one that's fully controlled, where the boundaries between choice and manipulation no longer exist. Lena's mind swirled, the enormity of it all almost too much to bear. And Jack? Emily? Are they part of this too? The man nodded. They've all been influenced, but they, too, are part of the experiment. They were chosen for their roles in your life. Lena felt as though the ground had been ripped from under her. Everything, her family, her relationships, had been part of a grand design. The thought was unbearable. But deep down, she knew there was no turning back. She had uncovered the truth. And now, the only choice left was what she would do with it. The man stepped closer, his face softening just slightly. The question now is what you do, Lena. Will you accept the system? Or will you fight it? Lena looked around the room, the maps, the papers, everything that had been carefully orchestrated. She could feel the weight of it all pressing down on her. But there was something else, too. A spark of defiance. A glimmer of the person she had always been beneath the illusion. I won't accept it, she said, her voice steady. I will fight. The man's eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak. He simply nodded, as though he had expected this answer all along. And with that, Lena knew that her life, everything she had ever known, was about to change forever.